Mark Zuckerberg responds with a letter to Jim Jordan. Here's what he said. I'm going to read some of it to you. I appreciate the committee's interest in content moderation on online platforms. As you're aware, Meta has produced thousands of documents as part of your investigation and made a dozen employees available for transcribed interviews. Okay, so at that point, I'm thinking, okay, this is just going to be the normal form letter. You know, we've done what we could. We have obeyed. Leave us alone. Let's skip a couple paragraphs down. In 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take content down, and we own our decisions. And you skip forward a little bit more. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. I also think we made some choices that the hindsight, new information we wouldn't make today. Like I said to our teams at the time, I feel strongly we should not compromise our content standards due to pressure from any administration in either direction, and we're ready to push back if something like this happens again. That is pretty strong. Again, we are in the middle of the pandemic. You had a Biden administration coming and pushing. Look, when the government comes knocking, I'm sorry, it's easy to just go, okay, we'll do what you want. That's what is pretty standard. Most people don't push back against their government. But you know what you have, even if it's a couple years late, you have somebody writing this letter, not somebody, one of the richest people in the country, someone who controls a lot of what we see right now. You may be watching us on Facebook right now. You may be watching us on Instagram right now. When you have people like this who are willing to make these statements, I actually feel like there's hope. I felt that way when Elon Musk purchased Twitter at the time, now X. I feel like he purchased it, and there was a moment where I almost had a sigh of relief going, okay, well, there's somebody on our side in the social media platform. I'm not saying Zuckerberg is on your side, but what I'm saying is company-wide, he is now making a statement saying we are no longer going to bow down to a government. And we're certainly, and really later on says, I'm not personally even getting involved in this election. I'm not making any donations. And trust me, they don't want to hear that. I'm not making any donations, and I'm not engaging.
That's right. And like you said, when you first read the first paragraph, you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be we did what we were told because the government came forward and they had a compelling case. But it's not. He pushes back on the government saying what they did was wrong, their pressure was wrong, and that they made the wrong decision because of that pressure. And I do see a lot of comments saying we don't trust him per se. This is too little too late. They're just trying to cover for themselves. I agree with many of those points, but I would also want to look at this with a different lens as well, is that one, they turned over documents to the government a year ago. It was thousands of pages. This comes at a time when you are seeing voices like RFK Jr., who was someone who was a victim of many of that censorship during it, rise to a more prominent level.
Very recently, by the way.
Right.
This is where you do have to be careful.
So you look at this and you think, okay, what is the angle here? Is there a whistleblower that's going to come forward? But also remember that the states sued the government over censorship on Facebook platforms and lost at the Supreme Court. So it's not like really even, okay, there's a case coming that they got to get ahead of. If anything, this is a moment that there's a lot of questions around why he feels motivated to do this. And him saying he's not going to be engaging with money in politics, he wants to remain neutral in this, does give you hope that Facebook will not be utilized against conservatives in this upcoming election. And one other point to add to that is that he doesn't just bring up the COVID misinformation censorship. The next paragraph is he says, in a separate situation, the FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. Wow. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on corruption allegations involving then Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it while waiting for a reply. It's since been made clear that the reporting was not Russian disinformation, and in retrospect, we shouldn't have demoted the story. We've changed our policies and processes to make sure this doesn't happen again. For instance, we no longer temporarily demote things in the U.S. while waiting for fact checkers. So once again, this is a mea culpa saying we did the wrong thing, and here's how we have changed our policies. As well, this isn't just an open letter to the public. This is going to the Judiciary Committee and Jim Jordan, knowing that they have an investigation. So to some degree, there are teeth to these claims if they aren't following through, that Congress could come back and continue to investigate and cause a lot more problems for Meta if they aren't following through on these promises.
And look, we knew as we produce this broadcast each and every day, we put up content each and every day. We do it on Facebook. We've seen Facebook numbers drop, for being honest. We've seen YouTube numbers explode. We've seen Rumble numbers explode. People did start leaving the platform around that time because we knew we were being pushed down. We knew if we used certain words in a title, maybe words that were some of our top topics here, that if you're following our page, you would have wanted to know about. If you use those words, you were gone. We weren't going to get anyone served. Now, those numbers have ticked up a little, but what we also saw was a lot of people left. And I think maybe this is also them doing a little damage control thing. Can they get some people back on board? Obviously, Facebook is gigantic. Instagram is gigantic. It's not like they're hurting companies, but they have seen, specifically in this space, other people take the lead, whether that's YouTube or Rumble or X becomes sort of the platform for any sort of political content. And you've seen Facebook try to push themselves back against this. Look, it may be too little too late for people. I totally get that. I just think it's refreshing to read a letter like this that's also not coming from a PR rep. Sure, I'm sure it's vetted. They wrote it. And his legal team went through it a million times. But it is coming from Mark Zuckerberg himself. And he started to make a lot of these kind of statements in a lot of the podcast interviews he's been doing. And look, there's part of me that goes, okay, I'm not going to give the guy necessarily a benefit of the doubt here, but I am going to give people moments to change and to grow. We've seen a massive movement happen. We saw it with Elon Musk. You saw it with Donald Trump. You saw it with a lot of people who probably disagreed with you 10, 15 years ago, 5 years ago. You know, look at RFK or Tulsi Gabbard. These are people that are joining this sort of bigger tent of what it means to be a free speech conservative. And I think for a lot of us who have been free speech advocates for decades, sure, you got to go in with a bit of a guard. But if people are willing to see the truth here, it's an exciting time. And it really could shift. I know for a fact how much social media really does impact not only elections, but impact culture just in general. Whether that is Instagram, whether that is Facebook, whether that is TikTok, whether that is YouTube or Rumble, and you have to decide how you want to engage and what platforms you want to and where you want to put your data. I understand that as well. But it's really interesting to see this start happening. I have hope. I always look at things as, is there hope? And when I read an article like this and I see someone like a Mark Zuckerberg making these statements, I at least have a little hope. Let's actually go ahead and take some phone calls. I want to go to Ronald, who is on topic for today. Ronald, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. Yes, I just want to state and make comment that the 2020 elections would have had a far different outcome, but because of what was done by the liberal media and Zuckerberg and everybody else in withholding important facts and things of that nature that would have helped people to make better decisions when they went to the polling places.
Ronald, I think the impact social media has on people's voting habits is more immense than your brain probably will even let you believe. Somewhat, the algorithm knows you better than you do. And you are right. Could that have affected the election? Absolutely. I think you can't downplay it. When I look at when we had our biggest times on social media, by the way, look at when it was, right at the heat of the 2020 election. What's happening right now? We're having another big moment. Why? Because this is around when people start tuning in. People start paying attention. Sure, we have our core. They're always there. Trust me, you guys are the most important. But there are hundreds of thousands of other people that really don't get engaged till politics till about September of the election year.
Right.
So we're still about a week out. And when something like this happens, and you have one of the leaders of the biggest social media platform on earth, it's sort of the original, saying, yes, we essentially colluded with the Biden-Harris administration, and we regret it. It's a big moment. And it can't be understated. I really don't want you guys to take that and go, well, whatever he says, fine. He is admitting on record that they did this, and he at least is saying we're not going to do it again, and I really regret it because I've seen the negative impact probably on his business and on his life.
That's right. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has also responded to this news and said, he tweeted, looks like Mark Zuckerberg has joined the ranks of the crazed conspiracy theorists who claim that the Biden administration pressured Facebook to censor dissent during COVID.
Exactly. So there it is. That's from RFK Jr. Those are the kind of responses we should be looking at. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg's the next person to walk out on that stage. What would that be like? I don't think that's going to happen. He said he's not going to get involved in politics. But you already got Elon. At least you have Zuckerberg. I think a lot of these guys are big tech people, but they are free speech guys. And they really don't like the fact that their platforms have been put in a position to monitor people's speech or the responsibility. You can take it or leave it for that, whether they have the responsibility to do that or not.